Have you ever walked past someone in the corridor, perhaps a cleaner, a delivery person, someone going about the job no one applauds, and think, what's their story? We don't. Most of us don't. Not because we're not nice, but because we are preoccupied, concentrating, dashing from meeting to meeting, deadlines to hit, phones to answer. We don't take a moment to look past the uniform, past the surface. But every now and then, the individual you believe you know at first glance turns out to be the most remarkable individual in the building. That's exactly what occurred one typical Monday morning within a corporate skyscraper in Fort Worth, Texas. The type of environment with shiny floors, glass offices, and business cards that have a little too much authority. The company's CEO was walking in for another ordinary day. Same elevator, same walk, same pre-coffee musings. But on this morning, he was brought up short. A voice, firm, assertive, and speaking flawless Mandarin. He traced the sound, assuming perhaps an early arrival from their Shanghai office, and instead discovered a figure in a burgundy janitor's uniform, mop slung over his shoulder, calmly directing a lost visitor to the exit. Then suddenly she changed to Spanish to help a delivery person, then French, conversing casually with a seller about misplaced shipments. 3 languages in under 3 minutes. And before he knew it, everything he believed about his company and the people making it happen started to come undone. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever been that guy? The one people pass by and don't notice? The one who knows you had more to give, but life, timing, or just simple luck kept you holding in the wings while others stepped into the spotlight? Perhaps you had a family first before you were done with school. Perhaps you cared for someone while the world told you to keep climbing the rung. Perhaps you began again and again and discovered how to make peace with being invisible. But sometimes the perfect person looks a little longer, and then what follows can rewrite the story. It is the tale of Denise Atwater. And no, she was not famous. She was not a viral news headline or some technology startup whiz kid. She was a night janitor, a mom, a woman who'd once left a graduate degree in linguistics behind to tend to her ailing mother, who lost her dad shortly thereafter, who took jobs that paid the light bill but never inquired about her aspirations. She forged ahead. She appeared. She did not whine. And meanwhile, she continued studying, practiced on, continued learning 9 languages, 9 from books, from the radio, from snippets of time between work and the care of a daughter. She didn't do it for applause. She didn't even do it for employment. She did it because it made her feel like she was still significant. Now picture what's going to happen when someone like her is finally seated at the table. It wasn't easy. It wasn't smooth. Not everybody applauded when she went up a level. In fact, some complained, questioned, whispered about boxes being ticked and optics being played. But Denise didn't blink. She did what she'd always done, worked harder than anyone else, listened more closely, spoke more clearly, and when she spoke up in a strained meeting with international partners, using their language, honoring their culture, walls crumbled. Agreements got inked. Trust was established. Because there is strength in being noticed. And more than that, there is strength in noticing others. This isn't a story about a single woman's advancement. It's about the low-key genius that lies in plain view. It's about how businesses and neighborhoods can transform when we no longer measure individuals by their job function and begin to listen to their stories. It's about what can occur when you shift your gaze inward and at last see the gold in your own backyard. And it's about the ripple effect, how one moment of seeing can illuminate the path for so many. So if you've ever felt unseen, if you've ever been overlooked or told you weren't quite good enough, this one's for you. Because Denise Atwater's tale may sound a little like your own, or someone you know, a daughter, a friend, a colleague whose genius has been held back for far too long. And once you hear what came next, you'll see that this tale isn't just motivating, it's a reminder that greatness doesn't always wear a suit, that leadership doesn't always come from the top, and that sometimes the janitor is the smartest person in the room. Let's get into it. She was quietly mopping the lobby floor when something unexpected occurred, something that would ripple throughout the entire company. The CEO heard her talking fluent Spanish and French, and what happened next surprised everyone. At Halberg International, the cleaning crew generally flew below the radar. Not with disrespect, just the nature of busy offices being what they are. They worked after hours, moving quietly in their carts, switching trash bags, wiping down tables. The majority of employees barely gave them a passing glance. They were just background, there, but unseen, like elevator background music. It was an ordinary Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. The principal lobby hummed with the familiar early week activity, shoes clicking across the tile, individuals stuck on their phones, whispering about deadlines and holding their coffee cups like lifelines. Jonathan Kellerman, chief executive of Halberg International, was on his customary stroll from the parking structure up to the executive offices on the 18th floor. Nothing unusual until he overheard something that brought him to a halt, a voice, but not an ordinary one. One speaking Mandarin, with ease and fluency that even sounded a bit too good. That wasn't what shocked him, however. It was who was using it. He shifted his head, hoping perhaps for an arriving international team member early. But no, there she was, a woman in burgundy janitorial garb, standing beside the lobby digital directory. Her short twists were tied back tightly, and she was chatting reassuringly to a middle-aged man in a navy blazer and thick glasses. He looked both bewildered and relieved as she reassured him with warmth and authority. Kellerman observed intently. He had seen her before, rushing past in the corridors late at night. Always respectful, always reserved. She never replied unless addressed. He didn't even know her name. But there she was, assisting someone find his way around the building, in perfect Mandarin. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she turned and began conversing in impeccable Spanish with a delivery driver. Sí, gracias, he answered, a bit surprised himself. A few seconds later, she spoke to another vendor who was confused by some incorrectly labeled boxes. She directed him in French, pointing him toward the proper conference room with a serene, knowing smile. Kellerman's jaw clenched, not with anger, but with something more, something awkward, perhaps even a little shame. Here he was, the CEO of an international logistics firm, a man who had spent decades leading international teams, hiring professional translators, and sinking money into cultural sensitivity training. And yet, of all places, in his own building, cleaning floors just 2 floors below his office, was the most multilingual person he'd met in years. He moved closer, his voice inquiring, not dictatorial. "Excuse me?" She turned, surprised but calm. "Yes, sir?" He smiled slightly. "That was Mandarin, wasn't it?" "Yes, sir," she said. "You speak it fluently." "Yes, and Spanish. French." She nodded small. He lifted his eyebrows. "Anything else?" "Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I read Latin, but I don't really count that." He blinked, amazed. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." She told it straight out. No boast, no smugness. Just facts presented with the same reliability she showed when cleaning a floor. Kellerman stood there in stunned realization. This woman, the custodian everyone hurried by without seeing, wasn't merely the background. She was an encyclopedia of human language, laboring in a building full of individuals who never realized what she actually could do. "Your name is," he finally asked. "Denise Atwater." "Miss Atwater, may I have a few minutes?" She twitched an eyebrow. "Barely. Now?" "Yes," he said softly. "I'd like to speak with you in my office." He could read the hesitation in her eyes. Not fear, but rather the wary reflex of someone accustomed to being ignored. Someone who'd learned not to hope much from people in suits. Nevertheless, she nodded hesitantly. "All right." He pushed the elevator button and stood holding the door for her as she entered. The elevator whirred upward, and the silence lay between them, until Denise finally spoke. "I've worked here for 13 years, she said, looking straight ahead. He turned to her. "Never thought you'd be invited upstairs?" She gave a soft shrug. "Not really." Kellerman offered a small, thoughtful smile. "You might be surprised how quickly things can change." But even he didn't realize how true those words would be, not just for her, but for himself. When the doors on the elevator opened, Denise exited first. Her footsteps made hardly a whisper on the smooth wood floor of the executive corridor. The air carried a hint of citrus and leather, the smell some might refer to as the smell of money. The assistant for Kellerman looked up, taken aback by having Denise pass alongside him. He didn't provide an explanation, simply a nod to allow them through. Within the glass-walled modern office, Kellerman motioned toward the chair in front of his desk. "Please sit down." Denise settled down slowly, crossing her hands in her lap. Her gaze rolled around the room. She wasn't impressed, simply taking it all in. Behind him, the wall was covered in a big world map with colored pins scattered across it. On the table next to him rested a tray of espresso cups, a picture of two smiling girls, his girls, and an outdated award collecting dust, a memento from some trade show in Brussels. Kellerman leaned forward and placed his elbows on the desk, not heavily. "So, Denise, I'm going to be honest. I didn't anticipate this conversation today." She nodded ever so slightly. Her expression remained calm, unreadable. "But just now I heard you speak 3 different languages as if you were turning a switch on and off. And I need to know, how does a person with that level of ability end up here, working night shifts, mopping floors?" There was a silence. Her gaze wandered to the window, then back to his. "You got time for the truth?" "I wouldn't have asked otherwise," he replied. She took a deep breath and rubbed her hands together like she was getting warm palms ready. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio, only child. My dad was a pipe fitter, my mom a nurse's aide. We had very little, but they worked hard, pushed education like the gospel. I received a full scholarship to Kent State, linguistics. I was midway through my master's when my mom fell ill." She paused for a moment, then went on. "I came home to take care of her. Then 6 months later, my dad had a stroke. We lost him too. After that, everything just kind of fell apart." She cocked her head to the side as if rewinding tapes before playing them out. "Had a baby, no money. Father didn't stay, worked whatever I could get. Grocery stores, nursing homes, temp work. Then one day a custodial supervisor here approached me and gave me night shifts. It allowed me to get my daughter from school, pay the light bill. That's how I ended up here." Kellerman said nothing. He just listened, really listened. "But the languages," she continued, her voice firm. "I never quit learning. I borrowed texts, listened to tapes, read 5 different language newspapers, just to keep my wits about me." She let out a gentle breath. "Yes," she replied matter-of-factly. "I can do that." They were in conference room 4C minutes later. 4 Brazilian executives sat at the table, studying their phones, chatting quietly. When Denise entered the room, she nodded graciously and started speaking in suave, assertive Portuguese. The transformation took place in an instant, Kellerman observed. Shoulders relaxed, postures expanded. There was a spark in the room now, something human, something true. Denise wasn't merely interpreting words. She was constructing a bridge, a cultural one, a personal one. When one of the guests made a joke in Portuguese, Denise responded with a swift retort that had the entire room giggling. Kellerman didn't know the language, but he knew what was occurring. Connection. Approximately 20 minutes later, the meeting concluded. One of the Brazilian executives turned to him and spoke in English. "She's better than anyone we've had to work with this year. Where'd you find her?" Kellerman smiled, looking at Denise as she silently piled the vacant coffee cups. "Right here," he said. In the hallway again, he fell into step alongside her. "You ever do professional translation before?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nope, just assisted people, hospitals, government buildings, that kind of thing. No certificate, no time for school. My daughter required me more." Kellerman nodded thoughtfully. "And where is she now?" "She's 26, a nurse in Tempe, paid for school herself, stubborn, like her mama." They both smiled, and in that moment, it didn't feel like CEO and janitor. It felt like 2 people, just discussing life. Back at the service level, Denise cut back in. She had 2 more floors to clean before shift change. But before she went out, she came to him and said something that he remembered. "I didn't do anything special today." He cocked an eyebrow. "That's not how it seemed to me." She flashed him a small smile, then walked away. That evening, Jonathan Kellerman lingered in his car for a long time before turning the engine on. The parking lot was largely deserted, but his mind was filled to the brim with thoughts of Denise, of talent, of all the pressure to expand the company, impress investors, achieve diversity goals, and seek out fresh voices from across the globe. They'd been spending millions hiring abroad, pursuing innovation in distant cities. But occasionally, the gold's right in your own backyard. And when you see that, the question isn't really, how do I make it happen? The question is, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Denise's badge beeped at the wrong time. She just finished cleaning the East Lobby floor when her boss, Ron, touched her on the shoulder. His expression wasn't angry, just altered. Hey, Denise, Mr. Kellerman wants to talk to you again. She blinked. Did I do something wrong? Ron shook his head. He didn't say. Just told me to send you up. She dried her hands on a towel and walked toward the elevator, following the same route she had the previous day. Only this time, it felt different. People looked at her. Co-workers she passed gazed upward. Some of them whispered. One of the receptionists even smiled at her, a nice smile that meant, I know something you don't. When she entered the executive suite, Kellerman was by the window, drinking black coffee and gazing out over the skyline. Come in, he said, his back still turned. She entered and stood silently in the doorway. Finally, he turned to look at her. I've been thinking, he began, setting his mug down, about how many smart, capable people never get a shot, not because they're not good, just because no one bothers to look twice. Denise didn't respond. She didn't trust easy compliments. Too many people like to talk big, but rarely followed through. I want to build a new role, he went on, one that didn't previously exist. Something this company desperately needs, even if we didn't know it. She arched an eyebrow. For what? Cultural liaison for international affairs, he replied. Someone who has a sense of language and of nuance, who can bridge with our international guests, manage vendor communication, translate materials, and iron out all the spots where we keep running into trouble. She opened her mouth to speak but didn't know what to say. You're qualified, he went on, probably more than most of the folks on our leadership team. And you've already proven you've got the smarts, the poise, and the patience. She stared at him, eyes narrowing just a little. This real? As real as it gets. I don't have a college degree. You've got something better, he told her. Lived experience, discipline, and fluency in 9 languages. You think I care about a piece of paper? Denise shifted her weight, still unconvinced. Why me? She asked. He regarded her directly. Because I saw you fix 3 issues in 3 languages before 9 a.m. yesterday. And because I'm sick of walking past individuals like you, individuals doing double the work for half the recognition. She crossed her arms. You know what people are going to say. I don't care. They stood there suspended in a long silence. Then Denise exhaled. I've never worked an office job, she confessed. Never held a title. You'll catch on quick. I don't exactly have a wardrobe for this sort of thing. I'll have HR send you a clothing allowance. She gave a wry little laugh. You really thought of everything, huh? I'm trying, he said with a shrug. Another long pause stretched between them. Then Denise asked softly, what about my shift downstairs? Who replaces me? Kellerman smiled. We'll find someone, but no one's going to replace you. Neither of them spoke for a moment. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. You sure this isn't just some kind of favor? He shook his head. It's not a favor. It's overdue recognition. Her lip quivered, but only slightly. Her eyes sparkled, but she blinked the tears away before they fell. All right then, she said, speaking firmly. Let's see what I can do. He held out his hand. She shook his hand. But it wasn't merely a handshake. It was a rewriting of history, a subtle rewriting of what people believed was possible. What neither of them anticipated, however, was how everyone else in the building would react. By Wednesday, the news traveled quicker than the elevators. Denise Atwater, the late shift janitor, had been promoted to an executive position. Few people knew the whole story, just rumors, that she could talk a whole bunch of languages, that the CEO himself had personally selected her. Some people even wondered if maybe she had some clandestine past, government employment, perhaps even undercover intelligence. The rumor bounced around cubicles to conference rooms. Others nodded and smiled and said, "Good for her." But not everybody was applauding. Two marketing assistants huddled together in the staff lounge over their lunchtime salads. "I'm just saying," one whispered, "I have a master's in international business. I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion, and this lady was cleaning urinals last week." Her friend shrugged. "Perhaps she knows something we don't." "Oh, come on, it's just Kellerman preening about being progressive. Check a box." The same simmer was in boardrooms and Slack discussions. Low-key annoyance mixed with bewilderment. Folks weren't accustomed to watching someone skip rungs on the corporate ladder, much less from the basement. Denise sensed it as soon as she entered her new 12th floor office. It was a small room, a desk, a little green plant, and a computer she hadn't used yet. But to her, it could have been another world. When HR completed the onboarding forms, she had one thing she asked for. Could she keep her night uniform? Not to wear it, but to possess. A token of where she was from. That afternoon, she attended her first official meeting. Victor, head of international operations, walked in holding a clipboard and wearing a forced smile. He didn't shake her hand, didn't sit. "So you're the new liaison," he said, like the words had a punchline. Denise looked up. "That's what I'm told." "You have any experience in corporate settings?" She smiled calmly. "Only from the outside looking in." He didn't laugh. "Got a report from Italy, contracts from Dubai, and all the vendor chaos in São Paulo. You think you can handle it?" She didn't blink, standing up. "I'll need a couple of hours to go through it all. But yes, I can handle it." Victor slapped the folder on her desk and departed without saying another word. That evening, Kellerman visited her office. "How was day one?" he said. She stretched back in her chair and let out a breath. "I've had worse." He grinned. "Victor give you a bad time?" "He doesn't frighten me." "I guess so." She hesitated, then said, "May I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why now?" "Why me?" Her voice was sincere, not resentful. "You could have just given me a bonus and proceeded with your life." Noah leaned against the doorway. "Because I recognize something in you." She raised an eyebrow. "You were a janitor." "No," he laughed. "But I was overlooked. A lot. My dad made cars last in a town most folks drive through without slowing down. I worked 3 jobs to finish college. Years of being told that I didn't belong in rooms like this one." Denise nodded slowly. "Now you get to decide who gets in," she said. He nodded again. "Exactly." There was a quiet moment. Denise looked down at the heavy file on her desk. "I'll be honest, I'm scared." "That's good," he replied. "Means you care." She raised her eyes again to his. "There's going to be people who are going to despise this. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, we're going forward." Kellerman stood straight. "You've got a story, Denise, a true one. And now you've got a platform." He spun and left, the door softly clicking shut. Denise sat in her new office chair, taking in the strange surroundings. And she recalled the years of crying silently in bathroom cubicles during lunch, the evenings of returning home bone-weary, feet throbbing, with just enough strength to heat up dinner, the birthdays she spent, the chances that passed her over for someone who didn't even greet her in the morning. She swung open her desk. She opened the drawer and tucked in her old janitor badge, not to forget, but to remember. To remember exactly what it took to get here. But this was no longer her story alone, and the spotlight was about to get a whole lot brighter. By Friday, a shiny nameplate had been installed outside her new office. Black letters carved into brushed steel. Denise Atwater, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs. It seemed clear, official, permanent. The word spread, this time, officially. There was an email to the entire company Friday morning, from Kellerman himself. Brief, blunt, and it weighed heavy. He briefed us on Denise's new position, explained her history, and most crucially, made it explicit. This was not about charity or show. It was about merit. She was the top candidate, no question. That didn't stem the side remarks. A few managers grumbled their disapproval under their breath. Others relaxed after observing her at work. Denise didn't press to impress. She didn't gloat. She simply did the job, with unobtrusive attention and exacting skill. She managed overseas clients more ably than the newest software. She picked up translation mistakes in ancient contracts, mistakes that had been costing the company money year after year. And she never made a fuss about it. She simply got it right. The next Monday, she was asked to attend a meeting with a Moroccan delegation. The firm had been attempting to build business in North Africa, but negotiations had been stuck for months, primarily because of cultural miscommunications and language barriers. Denise entered the room in a light beige blazer. She sat down, smiled, and identified herself in impeccable Moroccan Arabic. You could sense the atmosphere shift. Others leaned in. The anxiety dissipated. It wasn't the words, it was the respect. When someone speaks your tongue, it tells you that you're important, that someone made an effort. Following the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners walked up to her. He put his hand over his heart, a respectful gesture of appreciation. "No one's ever done that for us," he said. "Not in our language. Not like that." Denise smiled. "You count. That's all." By midweek, Kellerman did it again. He rechristened the company's master training room, the room where new hires convened and mid-managers conducted seminars. The old sign was removed. A new one went up. The Atwater Room. No big announcement, no cake, just a discreet notice and an underlying message that true change doesn't always require confetti. Later that afternoon, Kellerman stood outside the door as a new batch of interns came in. He heard one whisper, "Who's Atwater?" A senior staffer answered, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit." Denise discovered on the same day a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, only her name, scribbled in block letters. In it was a plain note. "I thought I was invisible for good, but today I stood a little taller. Because of you. Thanks." No signature, only silent evidence that someone had been paying attention. Someone who needed to know a different ending was possible. Denise sat there for a moment, the note clutched in her hand, her throat constricting. She didn't cry. She didn't need to, because that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a job. It was an opening, and now other people were coming through it as well. But not all doors remain open without protest, and someone was already setting about closing it. The backlash wasn't long in coming. Late Thursday afternoon, Denise was summoned to a meeting, not with Kellerman, but with someone higher. Eleanor Craig, high-level board member who'd flown in from Dallas, been with the firm since the 90s, renowned for razor-sharp suits and a razor-sharp wit. Denise entered a small windowless conference room on the 17th floor. Eleanor was already sitting at the table, covered in paperwork and exuding chilly authority. "Have a seat," she said, not even glancing up. Denise sat down. Eleanor clicked her pen twice on a document held in a manila folder. "So, Miss Atwater," she began, "I've gone over your file. You don't have any college degree? No. No prior corporate training, no management certifications." Denise didn't blink. "That's correct." Eleanor folded her hands and cocked her head slightly. "You were a janitor here 3 weeks ago." "I was," Denise replied matter-of-factly. Eleanor reclined in her chair. "Explain how someone with your experience is now handling high-level overseas affairs." Denise looked her straight in the eye without flinching. "Because I have the languages. Because I get the cultures. I've already resolved 2 vendor contracts and ironed out a 3-month behind schedule hiccup in our Morocco transaction. I also facilitated a verbal commitment with our Brazilian partners. Legal finalizing it next week." Eleanor's lips drew into a thin line. "So, you believe this company needs to be operated on instinct and charm?" Denise smiled barely. "No, ma'am. I believe it needs to be operated on results." Eleanor blinked. That was the first fracture in her otherwise smooth armor. "I don't require to be liked," Denise continued, "but I do require to be effective. And I am." Eleanor stood up and slowly closed the folder in front of her. "You're a gamble." Denise's voice dropped just a touch. "I'm used to that. My entire life's been one." When the meeting ended, Denise didn't head straight back to her office. She walked out of the building and crossed the street, settling onto a bench where she could see the tower of glass and steel she now worked in. She'd walked by that building for years, wearing a janitor's coat, steering cleaning carts, asking herself if anyone ever saw her at all. Now they did, and not everyone approved. She took out her phone and dialed her daughter. "Hey, Ma," her daughter said. "Everything all right?" Denise hesitated, then nodded to herself. "Yeah, just wanted to hear your voice." "You sure?" They chatted for a couple of minutes. Nothing profound. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a film that one of them wanted to see. But listening to her daughter laugh was finding her center once again. When they got off the phone, Denise sat in the silence for another minute. Then she got up, walked back across the street, and took the elevator back up to her floor. By the following morning, news of the meeting with Eleanor Craig already spread, like rumors always do in office buildings. But to everybody's surprise, Denise did not cower back. She arrived early. She conducted the team meeting with quiet assurance, answered a call from the German office without the use of a translator, and navigated it all with ease. Calm, sharp, unfazed. That same day, someone wrote a note on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." No signature, just 3 little words. But to Denise, they meant everything. Something started to change over the course of the next few weeks. People didn't just go to her for translation anymore. They went for advice, for insight, for clarity. She was fast becoming the resident expert on everything from vendor queries to presentation preparation. Interns began to ask to sit with her in advance of important meetings, and she never condescended to anyone. A shy Vietnamese intern named Bao walked up to her one quiet afternoon, looking nervous. "How did you learn all those languages?" he asked. She smiled brightly. "One word at a time, same way you will." Denise wasn't merely doing the job. She was reshaping the culture, brick by brick. One afternoon, Kellerman sat down with her in the break room for coffee. "I've been hearing good things," he said. She took a sip. "Been trying to ignore the bad ones. You're causing a stir." She shot him a sideways look. "A good thing?" He grinned. "Here, it translates to doing the right thing." They stood there in a comfortable, companionable quiet. "You know," he went on, "I've been considering establishing a training program for in-house talent, particularly people in non-desk positions. I think there are more Denises in this building." She nodded. "There are. They just haven't been spotted yet." He gazed at her for a moment. "Want to assist me with building it?" She smiled, putting down her cup. "Already begun, in my imagination." At the close of the month, the pilot program rolled out, a new project titled Voice Inside, aimed at providing employees company-wide access to language training, leadership coaching, mentoring, and career exposure company-wide. It was Denise's suggestion, and it took fire. Soon she was asked to give a speech at a national leadership summit on logistics in Cincinnati. She didn't attend to give some suave, feel-good tale. She attended to give the truth. "I wasn't ever really a janitor," she told a room of executives. "I was proficient. I was competent. I was prepared. But no one ever looked long enough to find it out." She paused, allowing it to sink in. "So the next time you walk by somebody without a title, ask yourself, what are you really missing?" The room was silent. Then it burst, standing ovation, full applause. Some brushed away tears. As she exited the auditorium, a young man caught up with her by the doors, tears streaming down his face. "My mom's a housekeeper," he whispered, "and she speaks 5 languages. I used to be ashamed to tell people that." Denise laid a gentle hand on his arm. "Don't ever be embarrassed about where you're from," she said. "The only thing you should be embarrassed about is remaining ignorant of greatness." And with that, she left the building taller than she ever had before. Not because of the standing ovation, not because of the new job, but because she refused to shift to suit the position. She took her whole self, every grunged-up layer of her experience, with her, and that changed everything. Never presuppose someone's value from what they wear, where they work, or their resume. Ability doesn't have a uniform. Having intelligence does not require permission. And genius? It may walk by you in slippers labeling itself with a mop. So if you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when they do, don't just take your seat at the table. Bring a few more chairs with you.